for attending our event today. I'm Dr. Paul W. Richardson, and I'm a full-time faculty member here at DeVry University. Now, folks, I am a project manager by trade, and I teach project management courses here at the university. Now, today, I'm here with one of my graduating students, Dan Fettig, and originally we were going to have another student to speak with us today, but unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, she was not able to join us. But we're still going to work with Dan today because I think he's got a really good story to tell. Because Dan is finishing his program in finishing the master's program here in project management, and Dan is looking to increase his skill set in his current career. And I'm confident we're going to have a great discussion because we want to make sure that everyone stays involved with what we're trying to do today. Because at the conclusion, we will have a question and answer section, but we do still want you to be engaged and ask your questions in the chat, okay? All right, so let's get started. So Dan, when we talk about reinventing yourself and reskilling, there's a lot of skills that apply to a lot of different industries, and we have to understand that. So what I'm wondering is, can you share a little bit about yourself in terms of some things that that you've experienced?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for having me today. My journey's been pretty rocky and interesting, and usually self-imposed obstacles, I'm afraid, to get to where I am now. But DeVry's been a huge part of my success in overcoming some of those obstacles. Started right out of high school. I spent 5 years at a couple of different schools pretending I was a college student before I realized I didn't really know how to study. Got myself into a recruiter's office and joined the Navy and went active duty for a few years. And it was going through schools in the Navy where I finally figured out how I needed to study in order to retain things. From there, I got out of active duty, joined the company that I'm still with today, and realized quickly there that being a veteran, as great as those skill sets weren't exactly enough for me to get to where I wanted to be in the company. So I decided it was time to go back to school and finish that bachelor's I had started years before. And I had tried a couple of universities, some brick and mortar institutions sitting in the classroom, and found really quickly that, frankly, due to my lifestyle and my schedule constraints, that those environments weren't really conducive to what I had figured out in the Navy about how I need to study. I got fortunate and found DeVry University, and immediately found academic success. I was an online student for my bachelor's degree, and the way the courses are structured really meshed very well with me in particular. Fast forward a few years, promoted at my company into the salary ranks, started taking on some more project management type roles and responsibilities, and did okay at the outset. About that time, the Navy Reserve knocked on the door and decided to send me back to active duty for a year. And I was fortunate to be sent to a very elite group of people. I worked in a joint environment surrounded by people that are all very highly educated, very motivated individuals. And it didn't take long being in that environment to realize it was time to go back to school again. This time, I didn't need to shop around. I didn't need to go look at other institutions. I knew exactly where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. So I reached out to the folks at DeVry and enrolled, started the enrollment process into the Master's in Project Management. And the timing actually was pretty fortuitous, because I think the phone call was on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and courses were starting that following Monday. And fortunately for me, having been an alum, the entrance process was nice and smooth and easy. So that's how I got here into the program management, Masters of Program Management, project management curriculum, and definitely looking forward to wrapping things up here in the next few days and moving on with my career.
All right. Well, excellent. And folks, let's understand this. Your journey might not be the same as Dan's. You might be in a situation where you are changing careers and looking for that second act. And one of the things that we know based on the program is that we have a lot of folks who are changing their careers and looking to try to, earn a new skill set that can help them either in their current career, if they're trying to move on to something a little different, or if they're really looking to really see exactly what's going to happen and how can I apply project management, even if I'm not in the position of a project manager. And I think that's one of the things about the program that's very unique is that we really want to make sure that you have a good understanding of the project management principles. And let's understand this about the project management principles. Okay, there's a few things that we need to understand. First and foremost, the principles are all about structure. For any project that you have, folks, you've got to have structure, because if you don't have structure, now you're just trying to find your way in the dark and you're not going to get there. So having that structure is very important. And then understand that fundamentally, you have to have that responsibility as a project manager in order to be successful. And that responsibility means that folks are going to be looking at you to be that person who's in charge and going to make sure that the project is going to move forward regardless of what happens. And if there is a problem, that you're going to step up and take ownership, okay? Because that's very important in order for any project to be successful. And then the other part of it is really understanding the strategy, okay? Too many times folks think of projects and they think, oh, well, I used to work on a project and we did it this way and then that was it. Well, see, folks, projects are no longer just a tactic. Projects are part of the strategy of the organization. So this whole idea of strategic thinking, okay, you can't even think about strategic thinking without also considering the project and project management. And that's where the principles will help you to be successful, because the vision of the organization is ultimately what everyone in the organization is trying to follow. And that's what we also want to make sure that happens with any types of projects that you're on. So the program really also focuses on this as well. And now also, in terms of your outlook as it relates to project management is very important. You have to have both a macro and a micro perspective. And so what do I mean by that? When we talk about a micro perspective, folks, you've got to get into the weeds. You've got to figure out what's happening and understand what you need to do. How can you be that catalyst sometimes in order to make sure things move from one point to another? Because ultimately the project needs to start, and of course it has to end, and you have to get in and get your hands dirty. But we also understand that we have to take a step back and understand how is the project in the organization. So we have to have that broad perspective to see, are we positioned well in order to make sure that the organization thrives? So having that micro and macro perspective is extremely important. And then the other part, okay, especially with regard to the organization, when you take those two perspectives, it's understanding the fact that project management has a lot to do with operations, and it also has a lot to do with human resources. So because understand this, folks, whenever a project is done, you're going to have a product or a service. And once that product or service is done in terms of your project, it has to move into operations. So in order for the organization to be successful, project management has to make sure that that functional area of the organization, that they have, a good connection and understand exactly what needs to happen. And in addition, what we know for projects, guess what? You need good people. So there's the connection with human resources. So understanding this, I think what you can start to see is that project management is just not something that's standalone. So in the program, that's one of the things that we preach, is understanding the fact that you're not just looking at a project just for the sake of getting something done. You're looking at a project to make sure that the organization is as strong as it possibly can be, okay? And that's something that we need to make sure that we understand. The other point is understanding that with project management, you have to have flexibility of thought, okay? And also flexibility as it relates to your actions, because at any given time, things could change in a project. And when that happens, you have to turn on a dime and make sure that you are in position to make sure that regardless of if you're caught off guard or if you're ready, that you're ready to act, okay? Because a fast-paced environment is what you're going to get when you work on any project. And I can tell you that from firsthand experience. Now, the other thing that we have to think about is that, we have to make sure that we are professionals, okay? And to be a professional project manager, that means that you have to incorporate all the different principles in project management, also understanding in terms of the behavior, in terms of what it takes to be a professional in any role that you have as it relates to project management. So what I now like to do is I'd like to ask Dan if he can explain to us what skills from the program that he has been applying, to his current job, or if you could also talk about, some things that could help you to be a successful project manager, that would be good.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think the first and foremost, and you touched on it a few times there, is the ability to look at both the macro and the micro. One of the things that this program definitely focuses on, of course, is the PMBOK, right? The project management body of knowledge, and the structure of project management therein. We really spent a lot of time on each of the steps through the process and how to organize your thoughts around those things so that you can get yourself both the macro look, the big picture, trying to get to where the project needs to be and how that's going to benefit the organization as a whole, down to the micro level in terms of those smaller bite-sized chunks, how to break these big projects down into smaller, more manageable things that can be accomplished, so that you're able to set near-term objectives that are easier for you and the rest of the project team to meet, and how to organize your thoughts around breaking those big projects down into more manageable sizes. That was definitely the first thing, the biggest thing I've gained out of this, I think, followed closely by communication. With communication, it's not just a matter of sending an email or an IM or leaving a voice message. As the sender of the message, it's critical that you take time to pause and ask your audience, your message recipients, if they are truly taking on board all of the meanings, all of the nuances of the message that you're trying to send, to make sure that what you are saying and the message that you're trying to convey is actually being heard, not just what your recipients want to hear per se. So I think those are the two biggest keys that I have drawn from this that are definitely helping me achieve a higher level of success with my project management and the things that I'm doing with my company.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. And folks, I also would like to make sure that we understand this, is that even if you aren't currently working in a project management position, these skills can still help you. I can tell you from my own personal experience, is that when I was working in the professional world, my job was working as a portfolio manager with different employee benefits. Well, what will that have to do with any projects? Well, the one thing that I knew and I discovered is I thought about it and I said, these different accounts that I have, they have a start date and an end date. And that's one of the first things that they teach you in the program. And I was able, once I started learning more about project management and the different skills, I was able to start adapting those skills to my current job. Now, I wasn't in a project management position at the time, but I knew right away that these principles could help me. So even if you're not working in any type of a project management capacity, understand this, that these skills are skills that you can take and move into your current jobs in some way, because that's the one thing that we have to understand. Now, Dan mentioned the PMBOK, which is the Project Management Body of Knowledge, okay, that the Project Management Institute, sponsors, but understand the fact that it's about adapting and making sure that you can move those principles into any type of situation that you're in, regardless of if you're in a project manager capacity or not, okay? So, but let's also understand this, folks. What you will learn from this program is that there are a lot of moving parts as it relates to project management. And those moving parts sometimes can just get kind of crazy. But that's one thing that is something that is very important to understand, is that it's about making sure that you align those parts correctly. And one of the things that we attempt to do is making sure that folks understand, yeah, that's fine. but it's all about how you align these parts in order for you to be successful. And the fast-paced environment is something that I love. So to be in a position where you are that focal point, as I talked earlier about having that responsibility, is something that is very important, and it can be special, okay? But having that skill set is what helps you to be confident in terms of being successful in any type of project management role. Now, Dan, if you could, I'd like it if you could share with us what you enjoy most about project management.
Absolutely. Thank you. You already touched on it, actually. It's being the focal point. And I think it's key to point out that it's not just the focal point necessarily of the project, but of the project team members when they have questions or concerns or even ideas about how to move the project forward. But that also includes senior management and the executive sponsorship, perhaps, of the project themselves. They need a touch point. They need a point of contact to reach back to so that they can get all the information they need on status and budget and schedule, because of course they have people to report to as well. So I think being the focal point for those questions, inquiries, and suggestions is part of it, but it's also being able to take all those inputs and those questions and those human resources, as you pointed out, and keep everybody focused on that objective, that big project objective, to get it across the finish line. And when you are able to bring it in on time and on budget, and management and executive leadership sees that you are able to do that successfully, it's that sense of accomplishment when you get to that finish line and you know you did the job right and you've delivered not only the project in its complete form, but a valuable asset to the organization as they move forward with their strategic objectives.
Now, folks, Dan just talked about in terms of that accomplishment and that feeling that you got everything done at the end. But let's understand this. It's not without consequence in terms of you getting to that point. There are situations where you're going to be faced with challenges, okay? Challenges with any number of things as it relates to project management. And that's fine. But it's understanding the fact that you can work through those and understanding what types of things that you can do in certain situations is really where it's going to be beneficial in terms of how you can move forward with any type of project endeavor. Now, something to think about here, and I'd like Dan to share this with us, is any types of challenges that he's faced and how he's overcome them.
Oh, absolutely. In my organization, we build and launch satellites, spacecrafts of a variety of different capabilities. But they're usually one of a kind type vehicles. It's very rare when we're building a duplicate or a second generation. So our projects tend to be fraught with pitfalls because we're trying to answer questions that have never been asked before. We're trying to create new things, invent new capabilities. And with that, failure is inherent. So because you're never going to get the right answer. You're rarely going to get the right answer the first time you try. So you learn pretty quick how to think on your feet, and you get pretty comfortable with having those uncomfortable conversations. This didn't work out. This is why. This is our plan moving forward. I think of a time when I was testing a spacecraft, a series of times where I was testing in the middle of the night on a weekend, and something went wrong. Something went wrong with the test, and we had to safe the situation, and it was time to call all of the pertinent stakeholders at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. And that was not a situation I was comfortable with, but it was what had to be done because of the situation we were in. Well, thanks to some of the skills I've learned here, I found that the best way to approach it in the future was at the pre-test meetings to have that list of people that were going to need to be involved aware of the fact that their name and phone number is on a list, and that these phone calls may very well come in at 2 o'clock in the morning. If you want your spacecraft tested around the clock, sometimes things are going to go wrong when you're trying to sleep. So being able to lay that groundwork and that preparation for the eventuality that an unforeseen circumstance might come to fruition helped me to be able to, with my comfort level, to initiate those phone calls and those uncomfortable conversations. So being able to be quick on your feet, think through the situation and come up with the right answer is definitely a skill set that this program has helped me refine. It's a great quote I heard one time, and it absolutely applies here. You're never wrong to do the right thing. And this program gives you the tools to develop the confidence to be able to follow that saying through.
Absolutely. And I think, folks, one of the things that you heard in Dan's answer also is understanding just to keep calm and understanding that behavioral aspect of project management and also what's happening in the program, because that's something else that we want to make sure that students understand is that, project management, yeah, there's the technical part, but there's also that part where we have to understand the human aspects and the human issues that can happen with any types of situations where there's a challenge. Well, Dan, we're getting close to time, but I would like you, if you could you tell us what the future looks like for you?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll try to make this brief. I'm very excited in my current role. I am in a situation where I work with people who we are trying to put our astronauts back on the moon, and then on to Mars from there. I work with a collection of physicists and mathematicians and data scientists, and we're developing machine learning and artificial intelligence tools to help sever that communication latency tether that has kept us as close to the Earth as the moon. Because to get beyond that, we have certain challenges we have to overcome. And it's my role to keep these data scientists, physicists, and mathematicians focused on near-term objectives that are the stepping stones that are going to get us to that overall objective of getting our astronauts back on the moon and ultimately to Mars. So this completing this program gives me a degree of parity with these brilliant minds that are working towards this national objective and international objective in many cases. So that I have an authority with them when we have the conversations in the room and I need to get people focused on the task at hand, because it's very easy to get starry-eyed and dreamy about being on Mars and forget about what you need to get done next week. It does happen. So my future is very exciting. I'm very grateful for the school, for the skill set the school has provided to me and the opportunity I have to employ it immediately. I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm using the skills you've taught me just this semester alone, just earlier today, in fact. So I look forward to continuing to bring that to the organization and the project and getting our astronauts onto Mars.
All right. Well, folks, we're getting close to the end, but we want to make sure that we take time to answer some of the questions that you might have. And keep posting your questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can right now. And it looks like Eric has asked, I am a supply chain professional who has an MBA with a focus in project management. Is it beneficial to sit for the PMP? Absolutely. I strongly suggest that you do sit for the PMP. And understand this, also something to take into consideration, Erica, is the fact that the PMP is going to be changing. If you're on PMI's website, that's one of the things that they talked about is that the exam, they have the date as being January 1st, 2021. So it's if you're learning with the 6th edition right now and understanding you've been training for it, I suggest you definitely do it right now before things change, because it might be a little different than what you have been studying. So yes, I definitely think you should. Chelsea is asking us, do companies accept employees with the education and not necessarily the experience background? Well, Chelsea, that's it all depends on the organization. Some organizations understand that in terms of the education that you have, they understand that, yeah, you're a work in progress. And they also understand that, we can teach this person. But what's important for you to understand is that a lot of times organizations want to make sure that you understand the language of project management. And when you understand that language, that helps you to really think on your feet more. And as you start working in the role, you'll gain that experience. Now, Dan, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. I was one of those people that kind of had the role before the education, and it was a steep learning curve initially, but getting that education and learning that language, as you put it, certainly smoothed things out and has definitely increased my success as a project manager. So, yeah, my organization sort of thrust me into the role. Turns out I kind of liked it. And as I went and sought the education, I've continued to increase my proficiency with the skill set.
Absolutely. Now, Gustavo is asking us, I like the idea of adopting PM knowledge principles to any capacity, but to get those certs, you need a huge level of commitment to the PM path. And absolutely you do. And Gustavo, let me just explain this. Before I even knew about project management, the PMP, I was not told, actually, I didn't even realize that it existed. I had a professor in my last semester getting my master's who mentioned, after hearing me give a presentation, that I have a lot of project management experience. Once I understood, once I had to do some research, and once I understood exactly what the PMP involved, there is a PMP handbook that the Project Management Institute has that I started reading through that, and it pretty much explains to you everything that you needed to do. And I had some work to do in terms of gathering my hours in terms of experience, understanding and making sure that I can talk intelligently about the different things that I've done, understanding that I had to get the 32 hours, which is something that the courses here allow you to do. Understanding the fact that there's a timetable and there's also the exam and the preparation and all of the work that I had to do. I'm a person that learns from index cards. I had to create my own index cards. So there was a lot of things that you have to do. But see, I think what's important to understand, Gustavo, is you got to figure out what your path is going to be. And I strongly suggest you taking a look at that handbook that the Project Management Institute has, because that can really help put things in perspective for you so that you can decide on what's best for you and what speed you're on and how you can get to that point. But yeah, it definitely does take some work to do that. All right. Kenyatta is asking, how long do people usually study for the PMP? Well, that really all depends. I can tell you this, that regardless of the program that you're in, as soon as you have met your time in terms of getting your 32 hours of classroom time that you have, especially if it's in a program like the one that we have, I always say, while the information is fresh in your head, you should already have been studying and doing your reading, so that within a week or two after you finish the program or finish the class that you've had, that you sit and you take the PMP. Because I waited for, I believe it was almost for 5 months, and just in that short amount of time, I felt like, wow, I really waited a little too long than I should have, even though I was studying like you wouldn't believe. So while it's fresh in your head, I always found that that's when you can be most successful. Dan, do you have any thoughts about that?
No, but well, I do, and I can fully appreciate that. And I've taken your advice based on he shared that with the class previously, by the way, and I therefore, yeah, I'm taking mine next month. So, I'm not going to wait 5 months. Absolutely, learn from Dr. Richardson's experience and jump on it as quick as possible. Absolutely.
All right. Alicia is asking us, what are the best ways to obtain a PDU? Does my MIS degree classes qualify for PDUs? Well, Alicia, I'm not really sure, because there's so many different programs out there in terms of what makes up the course. One of the things that you can do, and I found this to be very helpful for me, is originally I was working in the insurance industry, and I really didn't have that true project management in terms of, oh, Paul, you're working on a project. I, took a step back, and I felt as though I was working in a project management capacity. So what I did is I called, the Project Management Institute and had a conversation with them and talked about the things that, I've studied and the experience that I had. And I realized that I had a lot more project management experience than I realized. And what I like to tell folks is, don't discount what it is that you've been studying and what you know. Okay, don't tell yourself no. Let them tell you no. Okay, give them a call, have a conversation, just so that you understand, what, the things that you need to think about, because they'll let you know what will count and what will not count. And then also with the PDUs as well, that's something that they can clarify and help you with as well. All right. Alf is asking us, recently he saw headlines about stopping daily stand-up Scrum. Do you agree? I really don't have an opinion about that. I don't know too much about it, Alf, to really speak on that. Oh, Tia is asking us, can someone with a master's degree in public administration benefit from taking a PMP? Absolutely. Okay, because Tia, let's understand this. At some point, you will probably be in a position where you will have to either oversee a project, or someone will have to consult with you about a project, or you'll be a part of a project, or you might even be a project sponsor because it's in your department that you're having a project done. Okay, so understanding all of these different ways that you could look at a project is extremely important. Okay, and what I tell folks is, because project management is so widespread, at some point it's going to touch you, and being able to do that is going to help you. And I'll share with you something from a personal perspective. When you have folks that are coming to do work in your home, folks, to do, any type of contractors you hire, one of the things that the reason why how I select them is I hear them, if they can talk about what they're going to do in a project perspective, that's when I know that person really understands and knows what they're doing. So there's an example for you in terms of from a personal, but also from a professional standpoint. It's definitely something you should think about, and I agree that you can. All right, well, folks, we're at time. And again, I'd just like to thank you all again, especially Dan, for joining us today, for joining our LinkedIn Live event for today. And if this discussion has piqued your interest about pursuing a grad certificate or a master's in project management, Keller's next session starts October 26th. And if you have any questions, make sure that you go to our website and fill out the inquiry form, because someone will contact you about next steps, and also answer your questions to help you feel like that this is best for you. And again, Dan, I wanted to give you a warm thank you, and I really appreciate you spending this time with us today. And everyone, if you can have a great rest of your day, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.